Welcome to the MedDevice podcast, the show where we dive deep into the journeys of leaders and innovators shaping the future of diagnostics and medtech industry. Today we have a truly remarkable guest who embodies the spirit of legacy, resilience, and vision. Our guest is the managing director of Accurex Biomedical, a company that has been a quiet force in India's medical diagnostic industry for over 4 decades. From inheriting his family business at a very young age to transforming it into a modern, thriving enterprise, his story is one of profound leadership and an unwavering commitment to quality healthcare. He is not just a business leader, he is a thought leader who speaks passionately about the future of diagnostics in India, the need for indigenization, and the paramount importance of a brand built on trust. He has an incredible perspective of how to lead a company through change, emphasizing that mindset is more important than skill set and that integrity is the cornerstone of any great business. Please join me in welcoming the Managing Director of Accurex Biomedicals, Mr. Abhinav Thakur. Abhinav, always a pleasure to have you here and to meet and discuss and pick your brain.
Great, Sangeet. Thanks a lot for having me here. It's my pleasure, my honor, and I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, great. Let me start with that exciting milestone in your journey that is representing your company as well as representing our country in the World Economic Forum at Davos recently. Tell me something about that, Abhinav.
Yes. So we always, at least I used to always read about Davos, in the newspapers and watch it on NDTV, CNBC, on Economic Times. I used to read about it. And I used to always, be wondering about, like what's going on there, like why is everybody going to Davos and there's so much talk about, what's happening in Davos. And I was very fortunate that I got invited, to Davos by the Ministry of Commerce from Tamil Nadu. They had a delegation going there on a
Okay.
panel discussion on sustainability in business.
Okay.
And it was a very exciting time to get invited there and represent the medical device, the diagnostics industry, as they took companies from different domains.
Okay.
And we were selected by PricewaterhouseCoopers, who
Yeah.
did the selection process, and we were selected for representing our diagnostics industry in Davos on
Yeah.
this panel discussion on sustainability. It was very
Okay.
exciting to be there, and seeing is believing. And like once you go there, you realize like how big this event is, and
Mm-hmm.
the kind of discussions they're having over there are way ahead of time. For
Yeah.
example, there was this company, which was during the discussion, it came out that this company, in order to have sustainability as part of the culture, they have grown a forest around their factory, right? Not like we hear about planting trees, and this company has gone ahead and grown an entire forest all around its factory. And it's that level of sustainability that people have been, talking about and taking it to the next level, because today we know that the way we are consuming things, right, and the way we are polluting, be it air pollution, water pollution, or noise pollution, sustainability has to come in, right? And the future is going to be linked with companies that have built sustainability into part of their strategy, part of their culture, and part of the CSR. So it's very exciting to go to places like this and meet, people, the change makers of the world. So Paytm, Vijay Shekhar was there. He was also speaking, and it's very interesting to hear different perspectives of these people and actually get to meet them one on one and understand, how business is shaping up in the future and what the future is going to be like.
Wonderful. Wonderful. We are all proud of you, Abhinav, for representing our country there, our industry there, actually. And, people would be very keen to know about your journey. At a very young age, you took over the family business and probably at an unexpected stage. And from there, you rammed it, rammed it up to where it is today. We would like to know the biggest challenges that you faced when you stepped into the leadership of this family founded company.
Right. So in general, like family businesses, the biggest challenge, is that the division of the role, right? So
Mm.
there are a lot of people from the family if they are in the business,
Yeah,
be it uncles, be it father, son, or brothers,
yeah,
or extended family, sisters. The biggest challenge comes in who does what, right? So that is one of the biggest challenges in a traditional family business, right?
yeah,
So a lot of people who might be watching here are maybe from family businesses, and they will find that challenge, right? Like who is the decision maker? Because it's a very gray area, right? Because everybody is an owner in a way. Everybody is part of the promoter family. So it's very important to have definite roles laid out, like who's going to be looking after what functions, and there's no overlap, so that there's independent decision making. And if there's independent decision making, there's no conflict, right? So if somebody's looking after a certain function, there's no conflict. Somebody's looking after another function, they take full accountability, full responsibility for that function. However, in my case, it was very different. Like we did not have we had suddenly a leadership, I would say, a vacuum in our company, right? So unfortunately, my father passed away prematurely in 2004. And
yeah.
that time I was studying in the US. I was in college, and I came back to India, and I took over the business. So my family business journey was very different. My challenges were very different from what generally the challenges are there in family businesses. So the challenge was, at the age of 22, how do you run a business, right? If you're running a startup, there are so many startups, right? People start even in college. For example, if you look at the Indian scenario of like Zepto or Zerodha or even Oyo Rooms, right? These are startups. They started at a young age. Or you look at the US, where you have Facebook, or you have other tech companies like Uber or so. However, there, when you start doing a startup, you're evolving with the business, right? The business is growing, you're learning, etc. Here, in this case, the business was already, I would say, a mature business, and I had to jump in and run the business from the already a running business. So that was a challenge. How do you take decisions when you don't know what the background is? You don't have the background knowledge. You don't have the background information. So that was a challenge, and uh, it was also a learning opportunity, I would say. So that's how I think businesses is something you have to learn by doing it. You cannot study a book and you cannot learn business, right? So you cannot learn swimming by reading a book on swimming.
Right.
You cannot learn cycling by reading a book on cycling. Same way, you cannot learn business by reading a book on business. You have to get into the business. You have to start taking decisions, and not every decision is going to be a correct decision. You are going to make mistakes, you will make wrong decisions, and you will also make right decisions. But what is important is that the decisions which you make, and you make mistakes from those are invaluable. Those are lessons which I would say no business school can teach you, no book can teach you. And when you learn from those practical mistakes, or those practical decisions you take which didn't go the right way, those are life lessons that will stay with you for the rest of your life.
I was when you were telling this that business has to be learned by doing. The same thing I had in my mind. So, what's the impact or what's the value addition of a business course like an MBA, and whether they get benefited if they want to get into business? I mean, what do they learn? What do you teach which are relevant to business?
So this is a million dollar question, right? Always on the mind of a lot of people. They're like, "Oh, you're a college, like college dropouts can also like build billion dollar companies, right?" And we have seen that with Steve Jobs, for example, right? He didn't go out of college, or Mark Zuckerberg, he dropped out of college. So where does your question is absolutely right, right? Like if you're going to spend like more than a crore, or and going to take an MBA from a foreign university, is it worth it? Right? So that's a very personal decision, and it depends on everybody's different circumstances,
Yeah.
right? So one thing for sure, which I will say about doing an MBA, is that you need work experience before you do an MBA. Just don't finish your bachelor's and just jump into an MBA school, because again, business is learned by doing. It's not learned from business. And when you go into an MBA, after having an experience, you will learn much faster. You will be able to see how this can be applied. So that
Right.
is really one thing that definitely you should do, like get experience, then go to an MBA. And the other thing is, what do you really want to do, right? So if you're looking at becoming an entrepreneur, it's not necessary you need an MBA, right?
Right.
Most of the entrepreneurs don't even have an MBA if you look at it, and they're very successful. However, if you're
Right.
looking at becoming a professional and looking at getting into an MNC, there are a lot
Yeah.
of MNCs which will only hire people who are coming from a certain school, not
Yeah.
only an MBA, but an MBA only from Harvard.
Yeah.
So there are some firms that have all MBAs only from Harvard. So it depends on
Right.
what your end goal is. If you want to become a professional and you want to work in a certain type of company, then yes, you will need that MBA, because without that, you will not be able to go into that company and grow in that company. You might remain at a certain level, but to go to the vice president, general manager, or CEO level, you will need that MBA, because that's the filter those companies use to filter the candidates. However, if
Right.
you're starting a business and you want to become an entrepreneur, it's not necessary that you should have an MBA. You can do short-term executive courses. Like I do a lot of short-term executive courses. For example, I've done a short-term executive course from Stanford University, Graduate School of Business, Stanford, which is the number one business school in the world.
Right.
And you learn a lot from there. You don't need to go through the entire MBA. You have the same professors coming and teaching you the same business theory, business knowledge, business fundamentals, and you can pick that up and use into your business.
Right. Wonderful. So, while researching about you, I came across your grandfather, Shri Jaswant Singh Thakurji. And I came to know that he was with Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. That's a remarkable journey, and how has his life and values influenced you personally? And tell us something about that, right, from your granddad, and how it has influenced you.
Yes, yes. So again, I would say like I'm very blessed, right, to have a grandfather who was a freedom fighter, and so basically his story was that he was recruited by the British. The British were fighting the World War II,
Right.
and when they were fighting the World War II, they needed Indian soldiers. So they had recruited a lot of Indian soldiers who went to North Africa for a war against
Yeah.
the Germans. However, the British army lost the war to the Germans, and my grandfather was taken as a prisoner of war at that point of time
Right.
into Germany. And he was taken as a prisoner of war from North Africa at that time, like in 1940s, and taken away to Germany, where he lived in the German camps. And they were there for a very long time. I think about 3 to 4 years he lived in Germany, and they were just POW, that is a prisoner of war. And then Subhash Chandra Bose, fortunately, came. He got out of India because the British were behind him, and he came secretly to Germany to meet with the German army. And that time, the German army was like, "Yes, there are so many prisoners of wars who are here, who are Indian." So he's like, "Can I meet them?" So Subhash Chandra Bose met with the Indian soldiers, and he was like, why are we fighting, for the British? Let us fight against the British, right? We want to take independence, so we should fight against them. And like you guys are now prisoners of wars, instead of that, become soldiers, and let's fight and unite against the British. So this was his Subhash Chandra Bose's thought process of what he wanted to do, and it was a very difficult decision, because if you decide to change from a prisoner of war to start fighting against the British Empire, that's looked at as a treason, right? You're going against the Queen. So a lot of the soldiers were, had resistance that no, if we do this, there will be a risk. There will be a risk not only for us but also for our families.
Yeah.
So, Subhash Chandra Bose, being the inspirational leader that he is, he somehow, motivated, inspired, the soldiers, and my grandfather was there, one of them, and he joined Subhash Chandra Bose. So he was the first eight soldiers to join Subhash Chandra Bose's Azad Hind Fauj, and
Wonderful.
that Azad Hind Fauj was founded in Germany. And there's a very rare photograph, which I will be sharing with you of him. That's how he became a freedom fighter, and that's the story.
This is a wonderful piece of history that you're talking today, which I think I'm sure almost all of us never knew. This kind of real history. Wonderful. So coming back to Accurex, so how did it all happen after you joined? How did you scale it up, and how did Accurex evolve since
Right.
then till to what it is today?
Right. So business is always dynamic, right? Be it you are in diagnostics, you're in medical devices, healthcare, or in IT. Business is never static, right? So when I came into Acurex, also our business was dynamic, right? Because the markets are evolving, everything is changing. And we saw that we were a hardcore biochemistry reagent company. So we were very well known for our reagents, right? Extremely well known for our reagents because we are the first company in India to start manufacturing reagents. Like we talk about Make in India, Make in India. In 1984, we started manufacturing biochemistry reagents in the country where everything was being imported. However, I started seeing over a period of time that you had to become a solution provider. You cannot just sell only the reagents. You have to have the instrument and the reagent both because the customer wants one company that can provide a solution to them. Otherwise, the customer is like, okay, the reagent is not working, or is it the instrument that's not working? And then the instrument company will blame the reagent company blames the instrument company, and the customer is like, no, I just want a single solution provider. So for us, it was very important that we also start selling instruments analyzers also. However, that's a
Right.
very big challenge for a company that has been manufacturing reagents for the last 20 years at that time, like since 1984, and this
Mhm.
was in 2004 to get into a culture of having instruments, right? In the diagnostics industry, like in instrument service is a key, right? It is a totally different ballgame of selling and servicing instruments and selling and servicing reagents, right? The reagent, the value is very low, okay? And if the customer is not happy with the reagent, he just shifts the reagent and goes to another company. In instruments, the value is very high. It's a
Yeah.
5-year time span you're with the customer. You have to provide the service to the customer. The customer is not going to switch to another company. He has bought that instrument, he needs service from you. So it was very difficult for us to change our culture, change our thought process, and also add a whole new team of service engineers. We didn't have a single service engineer in our company. We started with one, and today we have about 45 service engineers, and we have the entire range of instrumentation. We have biochemistry, semi-automatic, what we started with. We have a fully automatic biochemistry analyzer. We have two models of biochemistry, fully automatic analyzers. We have CBC 3-part, CBC 5-part, urine analyzer, electrolyte analyzer, and we are increasing the range of the instrumentation. So I think that was one of the big changes we did, and I'm very happy we did that change because if we had not done that today, it's not possible to survive only or selling reagents.
Yeah. Yeah, but at the same time, there are quite a lot of companies there who is having this reagent plus instrument combo,
Yes.
which is having the similar model. So, how do you position yourselves differently from others?
So I always believe, that the patient can never wait, right? So if I'm a patient and I go to a lab and I want my result, right? Because I have to, maybe I'm running a fever, maybe I need to take some therapy, right? Which from the doctor. And if the lab comes back to me and says, my machine is down,
Yeah,
I cannot give you the report, right?
yeah,
Or it gives you an inaccurate report. Even
yeah.
if there's one thing about giving you a delayed report, but there's another. I think the bigger mistake is giving you an inaccurate report. So I think how you can have to differentiate yourself, especially in the medical field, in the diagnostic field, is first thing is the accuracy.
Yeah.
Your report has to be precise and accurate, right? So
Yes.
that is something we really believe in. We believe in, like, if you're selling a diagnostic test, sell it like someone from your family will be using it and getting tested.
Mhm. Yes.
So with that thought process, you have to go in and you have to provide that kind of quality so that the result is correct. Because 70% of medical decisions are based on diagnostic reports.
Yeah.
So from the time you give a therapy to the time you decide to take a patient into the hospital, from the time you decide to do a discharge, is 70% is decided on diagnostic report. That's how important that diagnostic report is. So to
True.
differentiate, coming back to your question, is that you have to have high quality in terms of accuracy and precision. Everybody says I have quality. No, you have to prove it with accuracy, precision,
Yeah.
HD, CV. So we run 6 international controls with every batch that we
Oh,
manufacture.
wonderful.
And we print those control values with every kit and give it to the customer, right? So that's the kind of confidence the customer has on the accuracy and the precision. And the
Wonderful.
other thing, what I was talking about, the patient can never wait, right? You cannot, you have to have fast turnaround time for breakdowns, for preventive maintenance, so that the lab machines are not down, right?
Yeah.
So these are the two areas. One is high accuracy and precision, and other is, high service deliverables.
Yeah, actually, it's a proud thing to say that you are one among the IVD companies who have started indigenous manufacturing at a many years back. Even when this Make in India as a initiative itself was not there. Today we are all talking about Make in India, but when it was not there, you were probably the first or second one among the
First,
two or three
the
companies.
first one to make
Oh,
biochemistry
really?
reagents.
Really, I didn't know. I correct myself. So you're the
Yeah,
first ones to manufacture the diagnostic kits in India.
enzymatic biochemistry reagents.
Oh, wonderful. And today also you have scaled up your manufacturing a lot. Plus, you have also adopted a lot of international partnerships as well to so as to expand. So how do you balance both indigenization and the collaboration, global collaborations?
So, it's there's a saying, right? None of us is as smart as all of us. Okay,
Absolutely.
so it's not that, that I'm going to have access to all the technology in the world and I'm going to be making everything, right?
Mm.
It's not possible, right? There is some scientist sitting in some other part of the world who has figured out something, and or there's another company in some other part of the world which is better at making something else. So it's not competition, it's cooperation, right? So today there are companies in the world who have the technology that we don't have, right? Maybe it's a patent, or maybe it's just economies of scale. They can make the
Yeah.
product at a very high volume, and that brings down the cost for the patient.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong in having a collaboration, and having a manufacturing and having a collaboration with another company for products that you are not making in India.
Yeah.
So that's the way to do it, right? You cannot make everything. So you have good collaboration with foreign partners, and you develop the business. Having said that, the biggest challenge with products which are not made in India, right, is that they are not affordable for the Indian population. So if you're going to manufacture a product in Europe or USA or Japan, because these are the places the majority of the high-end diagnostic tests are made in the world, right? Europe, USA, and Japan. So if you're going to make a product in these countries and you're going to sell it into the Indian population, the economics just doesn't make sense, right? The cost of manufacturing is so high out there, cost of labor is so high that the product becomes too expensive for majority of a country, and the only
Yeah.
way to bring down that cost is to make in India. So
Right.
once the volumes pick up, once you have enough market demand, then you can start doing the reverse engineering and start making those products here. And that's what we've been doing over the last 40 years. We keep launching products. Once the demand picks up, and we want to make the product more affordable, then we do the backward engineering, and we start
Wonderful.
manufacturing the product in India.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And do you also export?
Yes, yes. We also export, and I think export is a great opportunity because it's a natural hedge. What I mean by natural hedge is that when you're doing a lot of imports and the dollar
Yeah.
rate goes up,
Yeah.
right? That puts a lot of pressure on the profitability of the company, right? Because you're importing something, say for example, at 83, and the dollar
Right.
goes up to 85, right?
Yeah.
That you just lose your margin right there. But when
Yeah.
you're exporting, on the other hand, and the dollar goes up, that
Yeah.
helps you. So you
Yeah.
need a natural hedge between that for
Yeah.
the exports. And the other part is the exports, the payments are always in advance, right?
Right.
So your payments are in advance, your margins are better, and there's a natural hedge. So these three reasons is very important that any business should also do exports in addition to the Indian domestic business.
So considerable percentage of your turnover is exports, or is it growing?
No,
Or
no. For us, it is not. For us, exports is 5% of our total revenue, and that is
all right.
because we have a very large operations in India. So
Right.
most of our bandwidth, goes into managing the India business. So that's the
Yeah.
reason. But having said that, we have started a separate exports, I would say a division, because it
Right.
needs a focus, right? Because if all our bandwidth is going into managing the India operations, so we don't have enough
Yeah.
bandwidth left for doing exports. So
Yeah.
that's the reason we have started a separate division for exports. So there's focus and growth in exports, and we have started an office in London that
Right.
is going to help us in doing the exports business.
Yeah. Wonderful. So, given that our industry is rapidly changing, where do you see the industry heading towards in the next 5 to 10 years?
So you're right, absolutely. Rapidly, it's like rapidly changing, and I think the biggest change has come, post COVID.
Yeah.
Right. So I'll give you the background why it happened post-COVID. So during COVID, most of the smaller labs, they were not testing. They were closed down due to, the different curfews or the different rules that were in place. And only the NABL labs were doing the COVID testing. Right.
Yeah.
So the NABL labs mean the large organized players, either the national players, right, or
Yeah.
the regional players who are NABL certified. And in India, like, the number of NABL certified labs are like very few, right?
Yeah.
Out of 150,000 labs, I think there must be like 2,000 or so labs that are NABL certified. And these labs were doing business for the 3 months, right? So customers started accessing these labs. They started getting used to going to these NABL labs, these big, large chains. And these chains are offering, the home service. So the customer doesn't even need to go to the lab. You just
Yeah.
like, you have an app, you call it Flebo, he comes home, takes your sample, and
Yeah.
you get your test in the, end of the day. And it's
Yeah.
NABL certified, and it is not even expensive, right? Because a lot of these large labs, because of their negotiation power, they're able to reduce the cost of the reagents, and
Yeah.
this they are able to get a good pricing, especially in the when they do a profile testing, right? So when you do these like profile testing, like 20 test, 30 test bundle or 50 test bundle plus bundle, the cost
Yes.
comes down significantly. So that has now caused a shift in the market where the customer is moving towards organized players. Okay.
Right.
So that's a very big change that's happening right now post COVID.
Yeah.
And you can see the change happening because, the so many lab chains have got listed, right? Like Dr. Lal
Yes.
has been listed for a while, but after that,
Yes.
Tharocare came in, Vijaya Diagnostics, Krishna Diagnostics,
True.
Metropolis has been listed. So there's a lot of money flowing into the organized players, which is
Yeah.
fueling their growth. And that is causing a lot of pressure on the standalone labs, right?
Yes.
So this is a very big change that's coming in and is going to continue, in the coming 5 years.
All right. So, what should Indian diagnostic companies do to evolve together?
Yeah. So this is a big challenge, right? Because the market is getting consolidated, right?
Yeah.
So consolidated in terms of, the number of labs are, the bigger labs are taking away more of the market share, right?
Yeah.
So because see the tier two, tier three labs also are growing, but the chain labs, the regional labs are growing at a much faster rate. So the market is moving, is getting consolidated, is moving towards the bigger labs. And when that happens, even the vendors get consolidated. That is, the IVD companies get consolidated, right? Because your customers are getting consolidated. And these customers are, buying the large modular systems. They're not buying the semi-automatic analyzers, right? So if you look at the large chains like Lal, Metropolis, Thyrocare, Krishna does a lot of semi-automatic because they are into the government sector also. But the other larger chains, they are all into modular systems, right?
Yeah.
However, on the other hand, the Indian manufacturers are not into the modular systems, right? We
Right.
are more into the semi-automatic 3-part, 5-part, 200 tests per hour, 300 tests per hour. Maybe we can go up to 400 tests per hour
Yeah.
or, higher. But we don't have the modular systems. And the problem is that the challenge is that the modular systems are only held by the big four companies.
Yeah.
Okay, so you look at Roche, Abbott, Siemens, and Danner. These are the four companies that have the big modular systems. It's like Boeing and Airbus, right? There are only two companies that manufacture these large planes in the world. In the same way, these big modular systems are only with these four companies in the IVD industry.
Yeah.
So then, when the market is consolidating and you are approaching the customers who are consolidating, you don't have the product to give them, right? These products are only with these four companies. So what do you do then? Because your market is not growing as fast as the chain labs. So then you have to start pivoting your business and start getting products that will be supplied to these chain labs or these regional labs or these hospitals. So, for example, opportunity would be looking at where you can supply to the satellite labs. Okay,
Yeah.
so in India today, because we're such a large country,
Yeah.
that you cannot work on, a single referral lab, right?
Yeah.
So all the chains, if you look at them, they all have satellite labs.
Yeah.
So you have to get those high quality products, right, which will be accepted in the satellite labs, which will compete against the quality of the large players like Roche, Abbott, Siemens, and Beckman Coulter. So if
Yeah.
you can provide the products which can be used in satellite labs
Yeah.
at the same quality and a better pricing than these other companies, that's a big opportunity.
Yeah, true, true. Great. So that also, apart from these top four or say top 10 IVD companies globally who are also having direct operations in India, there are quite a lot of other, second level IVD companies entering India, especially from China, Korea, even a few Europeans. So this is getting to be a very highly competitive world.
Right.
So, so what are the transformations that an Indian industry should do as a whole? Because you're one among the thought leaders. You
Right.
have said that yes, there are certain innovation gaps that others bring in and we couldn't. And as you said, we are also catching up in terms of learning from them. However, is there anything that we could do in on a short term to?
Yeah. So see another opportunity, like a lot of these companies, like you said, Korea, right? So it's very surprising. Korea is a large IVD market, right? So if you look at Asia, okay, you have China first, the big,
Yeah,
or Japan, I think, or Japan or China, right? One of them, and then number three is Korea,
yeah,
right? And then India is behind that. So Korea, surprisingly, for such a small country, it's a very highly developed IVD market, right? And they have amazing technology, right?
true.
The Korean point of care technology is, I would say, one of the best in the world.
Yeah.
Okay, and China is also, as you know, like it's the number one,
Mm.
in terms of IVD market size, right? So
Yeah.
they also have a large IVD industry, right? The internal consumption is so large that they have come up with companies and products that can, cater to this point of care market.
True.
And on one hand, we are seeing this consolidation I was talking about, right? Like large players, the big
Yeah.
labs are becoming bigger. But on the other hand, there's another trend that is happening is decentralization of healthcare.
Right.
Decentralization of healthcare is where healthcare diagnostics is being done on the front line, like an
Yeah.
ASHA worker, right? Like an ASHA worker is now can do a diagnostic test, right?
Yes.
Which earlier was sent only to a lab,
Yeah.
or of a doctor sitting in a clinic can run a
Yeah.
diagnostic test,
Yeah.
right? So this is another opportunity where these products come in from Korea or from
Yeah.
China, which can fit into this point of care, the decentralization of healthcare, democratization of diagnostics. And this is a
Yes.
great opportunity for companies in India, because
Yes.
in India 60% of our population lives in rural India, but it has
Yes.
only 20% of the infrastructure, medical
Mm.
infrastructure. So
Yes.
point of care test is where there's going to be a huge opportunity
Yes.
for all the Indian companies to find the
Yes.
right partners and to
Yes.
get those products into India. And as I mentioned, over a period of time, as the volumes grow, do the reverse engineering and then start making those products in India.
Mm. Good. Great. So again, let's come to a different topic.
Yeah.
That's the AI.
Right.
How is AI influencing the diagnostic space in India? AI, digital health, and how
Yes.
much is IVD industry ready for the transformation?
I think it's a exciting time to be, right? Because AI is really changing our world, and it's making things much better, right?
Yeah.
Uh, it's helping us to improve quality, helping us to reduce cost,
Yes.
and I think it's going to be transformational for
Yeah.
us. It's very important that we all of us adopt AI into our businesses, into our lives, into our work. For example, I would say the biggest opportunity for India, right? Because
Yeah.
we are such a big country, right? Because like I said, we have our hands full in day-to-day operations and running our operations in India, because you have people like everywhere, right? From Kashmir to Kanyakumari, Rajkot to Guwahati, we cover the entire country.
Yeah.
And you have to have a team everywhere because the logistics is not as developed in India, right? So you need to have service engineers in every corner of the country if you want to service the diagnostics industry.
Yeah.
So AI comes in here. AI can help in doing AI combined with IoT. Okay, so you have AI
Okay.
and you have IoT, Internet of Things. You
Okay.
combine AI and IoT to do predictive maintenance. Right now, what we are doing, we're doing preventive maintenance. Okay, so I say, for example, you buy an instrument from me, I come to you for 3 times a year or 4 times a year, and I do
Mm.
my preventive maintenance and I go away.
Yeah.
But if we use AI and
Mm.
IoT to do predictive
Correct.
maintenance, so the
Yeah.
AI will tell you in advance that okay, there's some issues in the results, or there's some issue in the tubings, or there's some issue in the lamp, and
Yeah.
it'll give an alert, and the engineer will have enough time to prepare and come and resolve that issue. Or maybe
Yeah.
even the customer can resolve the issue. Or if the AI is built in to resolve the issue, the AI can resolve the issue. So
Yeah.
I think this is a great opportunity, especially for a country like India, where we are so spread out and we have 60% of the population living in the rural areas where it is very difficult to get trained manpower. I think AI is going to fill in that big gap there. And another place AI will help other than service is in quality control, right? So a lot of AI can be built around quality control, like for example, a simple thing like clot detection, right?
Yeah.
Or a lipemic sample, Accurex sample. So a lot of AI can be built around this to flag abnormal results or to tell about some quality control issues which might get skipped by human error.
So, what's the level of AI adoption in your company?
So AI adoption in our company right now, we are doing it through a semi-automatic analyzer. It's very interesting. So we have made this semi-automatic analyzer and we call it AT Smart, like a smartphone, right? So we
Okay.
call it Smart. So AT Smart, and it is connected to the Wi-Fi. So you can
Right.
connect this semi-automatic analyzer, a very, semi-automatic, the most basic analyzer, right?
Yeah.
And you connect it through Wi-Fi,
Right.
and you can access the entire the reports. You can access the how is the maintenance of the analyzer going on, are there
Yeah.
any issues in the readings, any issues in the lamp.
Yeah.
And we are building AI to
Yeah.
get into predictive maintenance for this analyzer, right? Because again, this analyzer is used in the small tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 towns, right, where
Yeah.
it is very difficult for an engineer to go like 400 kilometers and come back on the same day. So if we can have AI here do predictive maintenance, I think it will solve a lot of the problems in these smaller towns of not
Mm.
getting service on time,
Oh,
because of the remote locations that they're based in.
okay.
So that is one place we have started with AI in our semi-automatic analyzer.
Okay. And personally, how much time do you spend on upgrading yourselves to the AI era?
I think that's a good question, because I think personally we all must spend a lot of time on AI, right? Because AI is so new that there's no
Yeah.
one here who's going to teach us how to use
Yeah.
AI, right? I
Yeah.
think AI can only teach us how to use AI.
Yeah.
So, and the only way that will happen, like I said, like, you cannot learn swimming by reading a book, right? You cannot learn AI by reading a book. You have to like be on it, you know, every every day. So personally, I've not tracked, but we have these, mobile app trackers, like on
Yeah.
which app you spend how much time. But interesting, I will go and check it after this call. But I would assume at least, more than an hour or 2 hours a day at least on AI. And
Yeah.
maybe on some days, where I have a lot of work related to AI, I would even maybe spending 3 to 4 hours a day on AI.
Yeah. I'm also a great fan, or rather curious learner of AI. All the meetings that I have a AI attendant called Read AI,
Yeah.
where I
I'm
integrate
also
that.
using Read AI.
Yeah, so all the minutes and things
Yeah,
come.
it's amazing.
Yeah, and some of the videos that I make in about 15 minutes, which used to take about 2 to 3 days. So certain, videos, be it Marcom related, it takes, there are quite a few video generating apps that I'm using. And of course, ChatGPT, 50% of the time, instead of Googling out, we go directly to the ChatGPT.
Right.
So it's an interesting world. It's made our life much more
Yes.
easier, right? In fact, I could also come across uh, your granddad and all through,
Mm.
researching through the AI-enabled tools. So that's very interesting. Yeah.
Yes.
So coming to your leadership style and leadership lessons in Accurex, tell us something about how you lead the company.
So I think in leadership style, right, we used to follow, traditionally in business, not only in our company, anywhere, in the world, we had this heroic leadership style. A
Mm,
heroic leadership style means like, like there's a hero in like a movie like that. There's a hero in a company, and that hero makes all the decisions and he saves everything. End of the day, if there things are going down, he will help and save it. If things are going up, he will take it higher. So that was a heroic leadership style. But now, we are coming to an era of post heroic. So we
yeah.
follow this post heroic uh, style in our company,
Okay.
where everybody is a decision maker. It's
Hmm.
not that that only the leadership or the leader has to make a decision.
Right.
Everybody can make a decision, be empowered to make a decision, right?
Okay.
So we heavily believe in the post heroic leadership style, where everybody gets to take a decision, because when you take a decision versus a decision being given to you, you are more attached to a decision that you have made versus
Hmm.
somebody else making a decision for you. Because when you make a decision on your own, you take it personally. You're more
Right.
attached to it, and you will never destroy what you create.
Yeah.
So I think it is very important for everyone to get into post heroic leadership and empower the team to make the decisions. And not every decision will be correct, right? Not every decision that even I make is correct. But
Yeah.
that's how you learn,
Yeah.
right?
So, what's
From
the company culture? What kind of, as you have already given a kind of a short intro about collective leadership, if I could
right,
understand that. So, what else is there? What else do you foster within the company to ensure that people remain motivated? I know your company has some of the people who have been with you for more than 15, 18 years. Some of them, just they really love Accurex. The kind of loyalty that you enjoy with them is amazing. I
right,
know quite a few people who have been with you for many, many years. So, how do you
right,
keep them motivated, and what kind of shared vision do you have?
right. So, you're right. We have had people, for with us 15 years, 20 years working with us. I think what is important is, again, it comes down to empowerment, right? People want to take decisions. They don't want to be told what to do. They want to decide what, should be done. And if it's to be decided maybe at a company level, then the group can decide. Like we have a MRC, Management Review Committee, where every HOD, head of department, is part of that committee. And any company level decision, not a department level decisions, the head of department can go ahead and take the decision, right? They don't need to ask anyone about it. But when it comes to, say, a company level strategy, company level fund allocation, budget allocation, then it is made by a group level. So
Okay.
the group decides, that okay, what is in the best interest of the company, and what needs to be done. So I think that plays the most important role, empowerment, right? Let people get empowered and take ownership of the decisions that they're making, because those decisions are going to affect them the most, right? They're going to be working day in and day out with those decisions. So when
Yeah.
they take the decision, they will make sure they take the correct decision. And if they
Yeah.
don't take the correct decision at that time, they will make sure that they will evolve it and change it and tweak it into the correct decision in the future. So that is extremely important. And like what you said, right? Like AI, right? It's like you are spending so much time on learning AI. I think it's very important that in every company there should be a L&D, right? If you look at a lot of the pharma companies, I think pharma companies are like highly evolved because they've been in the industry for like so many years, and they're doing like thousands of crores of revenue.
Yeah.
Every pharma company has L&D, learning and development,
Yeah.
right? So in every diagnostic in company also we need to have an L&D,
Yeah.
learning and development, and
Yeah.
that is something which I think a lot of people value more than even I would say financial rewards, right?
True. True. So, on the topic of learning and development, do you take freshers into the company at entry level jobs?
Yes, yes, we take a lot of freshers in
Oh,
our company.
really?
Yeah, yeah.
That's a good thing, especially in sales. Also, do you take
Yes,
freshers?
yes. We take freshers, and we believe, that everybody was a fresher at one point of time. Even you were a fresher, right? So
Yeah.
I think there's nothing wrong with that. And the thing is that you can then mold them. You can train them with your culture, right? So if I take someone experienced, he's coming with a culture already set somewhere else, and that changing that culture is going to be very difficult, right? But when you take a
Yes.
fresher, you can train them, you can mold them, you can tell them about your culture and get them to be part of your culture.
Sometime back, maybe a couple of years back, I did a survey among 18 business leaders, industry leaders within the IVD. I asked them this question: do you take freshers in your company? I think more than 75 to 80% people said no. We all take people from the field who are experienced into sales. So I think your position is a very welcome change from
Right,
the majority, because I don't know for what reason they all poach from each other's companies rather than investing time and energies to train somebody or mold somebody, as you said, mold into a culture for a long term career.
right.
I mean, that's a great thing.
And I'll just want to add one thing, now I think everybody is going to start hiring freshers because,
Okay.
our Prime Minister has released a policy, employment linked incentive, ELI, which has gone live now. We have also enrolled for it, and I think everybody should enroll for it because the government of India is giving you an incentive to hire freshers. And the more details of the policy will be available online. I'll not go into the details, but in short, when you hire a fresher who is not registered with the UAN, right, first time employment,
Yeah.
and a part of the funding
Right.
of that
Yeah.
will be done by the government. So it's a great incentive now. I think so. What you're saying, 70 to 80% will become the other way around.
Hopefully, let's hope.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody will be hiring freshers.
Yeah, because I also felt that, this is my personal feeling that, new talent has to come into the industry.
Right,
It's not just the recirculation of the existing
right,
talent from one company to another, which also makes many people feel that yes, I can have a I can keep changing companies and
yeah,
do what I've been doing all the while
yeah,
without much of improvement. I've seen quite a lot of people in the field. They move companies
right,
once in 2 3 years or even lesser, and that's all they do for the next 20 years. So
right.
that's not good for the industry. I think newer talent should come in, and
Yes,
somebody like you should take the initiative to
right.
mold them and give it to the industry.
Hmm.
Of course they will give it back to the
Right,
company, but eventually to the industry as well.
right.
Great. So coming back to the Accurex story again, so what are your top two, three strategic priorities for Accurex in the next few years?
In the coming few years, right? So our top three strategies are based on what is happening in the market, right? We have to be dynamic. We have to keep changing, and now things are changing so fast because of the whole AI thing, and we're looking at how we can provide solutions, right, to like satellite labs. Okay.
Right.
So because we realized that the changes are happening in the market and there's a lot of consolidation happening. So we started business with Pathkind, for example, OnQuest, Newberg. So we had these are going to be some of our strategic priorities of getting into the satellite lab segment because we're not looking at reference lab. That's not something you want to get into, right? We're looking at getting into the satellite labs with the smaller footprint of the
Understood.
instruments. So that is one of the strategic immediate, right? Because that's going to give you immediate results. And the second one is, getting into point of care, right? There's going to be definitely there's going to be decentralization of healthcare. There's going to
yeah,
be democratization of diagnostics, because think of it like a patient, right? If I'm a patient and I'm running a fever, I'm not going to go to the lab and be like, okay, I come back in the evening, then go to the doctor again. I want to go to the doctor. I want to get my test done. I want to get my therapy immediately, right?
true.
That's definitely going to happen. Now the only question is, when is it going to happen? Is it going to happen this year or after 5 years? But that is going to happen. Point of care diagnostics is here to stay, and it will
Yeah,
become mainstream. You see in US today, 25% of diagnostics is point of care. You can go into a doctor's clinic, do your entire biochemistry in the doctor's clinic, not even the lab, and the doctor will do the testing, and he
yeah,
will give you the therapy, the medicine, and then you're done.
yeah,
So this is definitely going to be the future.
yeah, yeah. So one of the future to redefine the industry's point of care. Uh,
Yes.
if I get good, wonderful. So finally, one or two questions more, Abhinav. What advice would you give to the young entrepreneurs looking to enter the medtech diagnostic industry?
Yeah. So the advice, is something that I have picked up from Warren Buffett, right? Warren Buffett is the number one global investor in the world and the most successful investor. And he runs, I think, more than 65 companies, right? And he has stakes in like Gillette, Coke, and many other companies. And Berkshire Hathaway, which is his main company, is where he is.
Yes.
So he does a lot of hiring. He gives a lot of advice to a lot of CEOs or people who are joining, or entrepreneurs also. And he says, when there are three things you look for, right, in people, when you're looking
Yeah.
at people, right, the three areas that people should focus on also is, first is the most important is integrity, right?
All
So you
right.
have integrity. Then after that, you have intelligence, which
Yeah.
now with AI, we are very lucky. We can, it's a catalyst to our intelligence. And the third one, most important, is energy, right? Because he's like 80 plus and he has so much energy, at
Yeah.
that age, right? So you can be intelligent, you can have integrity, but if you don't have energy and you're just like, dead all the time, you don't have energy, you're always, your back is hurting or your head is hurting, and, then it's not going to work out. So,
Yeah.
but he says that if the first one is missing, if integrity is missing, don't even bother about the next two,
That. Yeah.
right? So there's no integrity, don't bother about the intelligence, and
Yeah.
don't bother about the energy, you know.
Yeah.
So I think integrity is the most important thing, and especially in healthcare,
Yeah.
right? In healthcare, it becomes even more important because you're dealing with lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why.
So if there's a young boy or a girl approaching you with a great idea, a tech idea or some idea with a lot of spark in his or her eyes, would you help her, or would you help him or her, or incubate that as part of your giving
Yeah,
back to
definitely.
society?
So, it's very interesting because just you asked this just very recently, actually, a couple of days back only, we have come up with a concept note of creating an incubation mentor-mentee program with the
Really
Association of Diagnostic Manufacturers of India.
wonderful, wonderful.
Right. So here you in the Association of Diagnostic Manufacturers of India, you have all the big giants of the IVD industry, right? So
Yeah,
every you can say like 99% of the industry is part of this
yeah,
association. But on the other hand, you have these startups, right? There are these, like, I was surprised to know there are more than 200 IVD startups in India. I
right.
didn't know that. I just found that out recently. And these startups have the technology, they have the idea, but they don't have the go to market,
Yeah,
GTM. They don't have the information about what the market requires. You
yeah,
know, Making a product in the lab and then commercializing it are very different things.
yeah,
So we're going to start with this concept note. We just made it a concept note now, but in the
yeah,
future it'll come up like what you're saying about mentoring and stuff. So there'll be a formal structure for anyone who wants to launch a product in India
yeah,
as
yeah.
a incubator, as incubator.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, one is the formal structure that, as you said, the Association of Diagnostic Manufacturers put in. But I would also add to it that people like you should mentor somebody
Yes, yes.
because
No, so I
because
will be there in that structure. Then will be other people also. So then it's up to the company to select the mentor. right? So you'll have a choice of like 5 or 6 people, and then you can select, whoever is from your. See, even diagnostics, there's biochemistry, hematology, rapid, there are different vertical segments, right? So
Yeah,
then, you have the freedom to select who you want to get mentored by.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, I missed to ask you earlier. Now, tell me about your hobbies, interests,
Yeah.
your how you keep yourselves fit.
Yes, yes, yes. So I mentioned, right? You need integrity, you need intelligence, and you need energy. So I think to get the energy is something that is very important. And so one of my hobbies, which I'm very lucky because I went to college in the US, and I went to California, and California has the most healthiest place in the world. So I
Right.
was very fortunate that when I was in college, my roommates, they were, American football players who were staying in my dorm, and they taught me, how to go to the gym in college, and that's stayed with me till today also. And that's how I think I can renew my energy and get more energy. So that is one of my hobbies. So at least every week I make sure that if not even if I'm traveling, at least I can do something. If I don't have access to a gym, at least I can do some body weight exercises, right? And do something like that. So at least do it even once a week is fine, even if I'm not able to do it 3 times a week. But like let not the chain break, and something is better than nothing. So that's one of my hobbies, right? To do some kind of physical exercise, be it body weight or be it gym, something
Yeah.
like that.
All right, Abhinav, what is that one thing that people may not know about you?
So yeah, so the one thing that I think most of the people, like except my family and maybe my friends, close friends, know. Other most of people don't know that I have a hobby of horse riding. Right?
Wonderful. Okay.
Yeah. So I picked up this hobby as a kid with my father. So we used to go to this Mahalakshmi race course in Mumbai and go
Right.
horse riding there. So that was a hobby that I picked up. However, unfortunately, I had a horse riding accident once, and so I had fallen off and I had fractured my bone here, and I had surgery and I had to put a rod and in there, and then now it's fine. Everything is fine. So it's part of the sport, right? If you're going to ride a horse, you're going to fall off a horse also.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah, but everything is fine now, and I'm not very active into horse riding right now because it requires to wake up very early in the morning, go early in the morning to the Mahalakshmi race course. So now I just do it, once in a blue moon.
great. Uh, Thank you so much, Abhinav. It's been pleasure talking to you. We have heard
Yes,
from you, your business journey right from the age of 22 and how you have adapted yourselves to the changes around you and taken the industry to the world level at Davos. And we also heard from you the innovation that you have been trying to bring in into the industry, and the fact that you are open to take fresh talent into the industry is a very welcome change. I admire you for that. As well as you spoke about helping youngsters to incubate their ideas and mentor them. It was quite a lot of interesting conversation with you, Abhinav. I'm
thanks.
sure the viewers also would have found it very interesting as well as informative. And if you have any comments, dear viewers, please put it in the comment box here. And I would request Abhinav to share his coordinates with you in the description box so that someone wants to write to Abhinav, seek his help, mentorship, and support. You can always do that. And thank you once again, Abhinav, for coming into the Med Device podcast.
I'm on LinkedIn, so you can always connect with me on LinkedIn also.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
great. Thanks a lot. Thank you. My
Okay, bye
pleasure.
bye. Bye.
Bye.